Surprise, it's me. I clicked the wrong button. Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. It is Thursday, September 21st, and it was 56 degrees here on the homestead this morning. Today's mystery item is this. And I'm not going to do this every day. This is just once in a while. I just happened to find this, so I thought it would be something to use. I would say most of you will probably get this, especially if you're over 50, maybe over 60. So I'm just showing it to you there, and then I'm just going to lay it over here out of the way, and you can put your guesses in the comment section, or you can just solve it in the comment section for some of you, because some of you will know. My friends call me Two Gun, and I answer when they call. My friends call me Two Gun, and I answer when they call. I keep one in my boot tops and one in my overall. Yodelay, yodelay, yodelay. I yodel-dee-delay, yodel-yodel-dee-delay, yodelay, yodelay. Well, we're going to get into some luthier tips this morning. That's going to be the big topic. Just words of wisdom, if you will. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's just cover some of the housekeeping things. First of all, I didn't check my subscriber count today, but I hope it's still going up. Let's see, we will be doing our live show here, right in this same location, on Thursday, September 28th at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll be joined by Fiddle Girl Gina Huizinga, the smiling one. And you'll enjoy that show, I'm sure. We will also, as a band, be doing a live show at the Lyric Live Theater on September 30th at 7 o'clock p.m. That's down in Newburgh, Missouri. Come join us if you can. We, as a group, most of the band and a lot of other friends will be down in Mountain View, Arkansas on October 19th through the 22nd. We look forward to seeing you down there. If you'd like to join us down there at Mountain View, Arkansas, just for a good time jamming, send me an email, rosastringworks@gmail.com, and I'll send you my text number while we're down there. That way you can get a hold of us. Well, Cash had his guitar lesson yesterday, and I think he had jet lag or maybe truck lag from going out to Colorado, I guess it was. And they did get a bunch of elk out there, so they were successful in their very short trip. They must have went to a place that had a lot of elk, and most of them got bull elk, it looked like. And they weren't giants, but they were pretty good size. And, Cash himself was really, really tired yesterday during the lesson. You could just tell, he just was wore out. But I started teaching him how to pick Folsom Prison Blues. He wants a song that he can play in a contest to help him win a contest. Well, I said, well, son, if you can do a Johnny Cash song and do it really, really well, you'll probably win your contest. So I'm teaching him Folsom Prison Blues. And, I'm not very good at it, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know I have a very lame version of it. I'm not a guitar picker, so none of you have to make that comment. I get it already, but I'm showing him a simple way to play it, and that simple way is something like this. Whoa, I can't even hit an E, let alone. I don't know if I can do it. Come over here and help me sing this song here, June. Anyway, I'm just showing him that. Generally, when I'm showing him, I do it a little better than that, actually. And he's getting it. He's got most of that down now, and he doesn't have it all down, but he got over half of it down. So he'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks and trying to learn the words to it. And I'm trying to encourage him, like I'm just showing him bits and pieces of it and telling him to watch Johnny Cash, and listen to it and, surprise me next week and show me you can do more of it than I just showed you, that kind of thing. And he just, that ain't happening much right now. We'll see if it does. Maybe that fire will get lit under him one of these days and he'll start figuring some of it out on his own. Somebody recommended these safety glasses. There you go. I like them. They're DeWalt safety glasses, and they have bifocal lenses. Can you see the bifocals there? I think you can. And that works pretty good. I like the bifocal part of that. So that's pretty cool. I can still see up pretty close, and I can still read up pretty close for the most part, but it's a little fuzzy, and this really clears it up. It makes it really nice. And so I put these on the products I use list because I do like them, and I know I'll use them. Having said that, it looks like I scratched it already. Can you believe it? That's what I hate about safety glasses. They get scratches in them, and then they're blurry. The only thing that was weird about these is it came with this. And you'd think, well, that's a case. You can stretch that and put it over there. You'd be wrong about that because you can't stretch this at all. I mean, it stretches a little bit, but hardly any, and it won't stretch enough to go over this whole big wide thing. Not even close. So the only way I can see to use it is you put it on like this, which is as awkward as socks on a rooster. So I wouldn't, that's going in the trash because it's of no value, which is probably why they're scratched. DeWalt, you made a good product and then you screwed it up. That's all I can tell you. Because that is total junk. At least, unless I'm just being stupid and don't know how to use it. Because I can't think of any way to get that on there. You cannot stretch it over that. Or you actually you probably could, but you'd be deforming these glasses so bad that I'm afraid they'd break. So the only way I know to get it on there, and it will go on there, is if you slide it around this way, all the way around. And that is, like I said, that's just as awkward as it can be. It's hard to do. It ain't worth my time. So there you go. But otherwise, I like the glasses themselves. They're really nice. They fit well, they feel good, and I like the bifocal part. And they're cheap, like $12 a set. So I bought 2 pair. Let's see. This is another thing I just got. I've had this live center for my metal lathe for a long time. This has got ball bearings in it, and it spins. So you put this in the end of your item you're turning on the lathe, and that holds the dead end of the work, if you will. You got your head up here that's spinning it, and then this holds the other end. And this is what you call a live center because it's got ball bearings in it, so it spins. Well, except that this is bulky. It's big and bulky, and sometimes you're tooling and you can't fit it in there real good, especially if you're working on a certain kind of size piece. So I bought me one of these, which you can see the difference there. First of all, it's a little longer, so it gives you a little more room in here. Second of all, it narrows down right in here so you can get your tooling in closer to your workpiece. So I've been wanting to get one of these for quite a while, and I'm really happy I got that yesterday. So I think that's going to help me a lot on my metal lathe and the work that I do there. I've got a couple of about 3 videos here, but I'll show you the first one first and probably show you the second one second, and no doubt I'll get the third one third. So here's the first one. Haven't done my commute for a few days, so you can see that it's really foggy morning. It's a beautiful morning here on the farm. It's perfect fall weather, 56 degrees, a little bit of a heat wave, in fact, because it's been upper 40s, low 50s most mornings over the last week. So this is perfect. I absolutely love this kind of weather. It really does make me want to get out in the woods and sit on a deer stand or something like that Now, I don't know if I'll be doing that much this year, but I'll probably certainly go out and look for hogs and maybe coyotes and things like that. What I've been hearing from people is that the Conservation of Missouri has confirmed that a mountain lion took down an elk down, I think, down near Eminence, Missouri, although I'm not sure the exact location. But anyway, apparently that's been confirmed. Several people have told me that. We saw a mountain lion here on the farm. I saw it, and about 2 weeks later, Sue saw it cross the road, our driveway that I'm walking on right now. In fact, it didn't cross very far from right where I'm standing. So we know they have been around. That's been at least 10 years ago, though. So we haven't seen one since then. We've never seen a bear here, although neighbors right over the hill behind me from the direction I'm walking right now have got 3 bears on a camera. So they're here too. Can you see anything? You can't even see the field barn that's out there right now. Crazy, isn't it? It's just beautiful. I love this kind of weather. Yeah, it's my favorite time of the year. I absolutely just love this kind of weather. If it could stay like this all year round, I'd be one happy camper. And let's see, that was the commute to work. And then when I walked in the shop door, I'm showing this just for your OCD watching pleasure. Well, for all my OCD friends, it's looking better in here. Not finished yet. I've worked on this hours and days. It's just amazing how much time this has taken. But I am just not trying to rush through it. I'm trying to make sure everything is really organized. So here's probably the biggest improvement since the last video is this area right here. And got things really organized in those areas there. Got all the mess cleaned off of this. I had all the mess cleaned off of here, but these are the parts that have been left over from the boxes I've been going through. I haven't decided what I'm doing with all that yet. It's stuff I don't want to throw away, but I'm not sure how I want to classify it and put it away. Some of it's solar, some of it's just thermostat stuff. Same way with this little bench. I haven't cleaned that off yet, and I haven't cleaned that off yet. But for the most part, things have been cleaned up. I still have a little mess there to clean up. But getting better every day. And I'll work on it some more today. One of my next things to do is to spend the biggest part of a day with a label maker and label all the drawers that have all the different parts and things in there. And yeah. That'll take a little time, but that'll help my OCD a whole lot more once I get that done. And here's the last little video clip. This one doesn't amount to much, but you might find it interesting. Trying a little experiment here. I found this Buckeye in one of the boxes I was cleaning out, and I just put it in some water a couple of days ago, and I thought it might sprout and send a root out. If that's the case, well, then we'll plant it, see if we can't get a Buckeye tree growing here on the farm. We found this Buckeye down on the county road. There's a tree down there. But as far as I know, I have no Buckeye trees here on the farm, so I thought it'd be kind of cool to get one planted. And that's just a little bit ironic that we're going to be going to the Buckeye State tomorrow, Ohio. Isn't that right? Isn't that the Buckeye State? So in the morning, I'll just remind you right now, we will not have a shop talk tomorrow morning because I'll be on the road headed toward Ohio. Let's see, what's their town? I forgot. I don't remember. You know me and names. I can't remember names. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get into the words of wisdom here in terms of an old luthier. As a matter of fact, let me click on, you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to click on this email that I've got, and I'll read you a little bit. I just sent a reply to Joseph Lesch, I guess, Loesch, and he sent me a very nice thank you letter back. It says, "Thank you, what a great explanation. I didn't expect such a clear answer, especially that the saddle should fit like it was poured in." So, the saddle fitting like it was poured in. That is the way I try to explain it, or the other way I say it is it looks like it grew in there, like the tree grew around it. That's the way a saddle should fit. But before we get into the saddle part, let's talk about, there's I don't know, 3-4 things I'm going to talk about here. And you might say, well, which one's the most important? Well, I think there is one, maybe that's the most important, but it's only most important by just a little bit, because they all are super important. Like each one of these things is important, and you really don't want to neglect any one of these things I'm about to talk about. And they're nothing new. You've already heard most of this, but I just thought, sometimes when you say it a little differently, it might click with somebody, and that's what happens a lot of times. Well, I would say if there is one that's more important than any of them, it's probably intonation. And for the people that aren't real up on what intonation is, it's basically when you press down a string, it's supposed to have a clear, perfect note, and it's supposed to be in the 440 pitch, and it's supposed to be right on the money. And then when you press that same string down in a different place, it should have a different pitch, but it should be dead center on your tuner. The pitch should be perfect. Like if the pitch is getting a little sharp, like if you go up the neck a little further, now the note's getting a little sharp and a little more sharp as you go further up the neck, well, then your intonation is off. It's just black and white. That's what's wrong. Your intonation is off. So you can test it with your tuner very easily. Let me give you an example here of what intonation is especially to a novice. Because a lot of people don't get it, they just don't understand. Especially there's people that watch this that aren't real musicians. They just like music and they watch this channel. For instance, like let's just talk about a C chord. This is a C chord on a guitar. And you hear how nice and clear and it sustains and it rings. That's because you're hitting all the notes properly and the guitar's in relatively good intonation. Now this one, I gotta be honest, this guitar is not perfect intonation, but it's pretty close. So you hear that harmony of that ringing, and you hear it's clear and it rings out loud. What if I were to say the intonation was off by a whole fret? And now that's a little extreme, I get it, but listen to the difference now. Here's the good one. Now here's the one where the intonation's off. It sounds dissonant, it sounds bad, it doesn't ring. Okay, that's what happens when you get your intonation off. Your whole chord doesn't work together. When the intonation's off just a little bit, see, you think that all it amounts to is that the note's off, but it's more than that. It's more than just the fact that the note is slightly off. What it really amounts to is it doesn't work together in that harmonious chord to send the whole sound out in one sound. Your chord it's individual notes, but it's one sound. Now, if any one note in that chord is off, then the sound doesn't come out as one clear, resonant sound. And that's what happens when your intonation's off. It's not so much that most people, I think that just the intonation's off, that's the only problem that you have. Well, it's not. It really affects the overall sound of your guitar because it doesn't ring true and clear on your whole chord. That's the more important part of the intonation than just the fact that the note's a little sharp. Sure, that's a problem. The note's a little sharp, but the real problem is you don't get your clarity, you don't get your harmonious punch ring out into the, throwing it out forward. Again, just like this, here's the right way. It's all kind of rings together, comes out as kind of like one sound. And then here's the bad way. You hear that one overtone note that's just not right, you know. Now imagine if all of them are not right just by a slight amount. It just doesn't work real well. I mean, it still sounds like a C chord, I'll admit. And you're saying, well, it's just a C chord that's a little bit sharp. Yeah, it is, kind of. But it doesn't ring out like it would if the intonation is perfect. So if I had to say one single thing was the most important, then the intonation is the most important. So how do you really check it? We'll just go into that a little bit more detail here. Okay, let me show you this up close so you'll see what I'm actually looking at. There's a needle there. Let me, might as well turn the thing on here. I think I can turn on the light too. My battery's almost dead on this. I didn't think about that, so this may not work. But anyway, this needle will bounce. And see how it goes to the center? And when I note that note now at the 12th fret, so now I can't hold all that and do it all. So like if I hold that note now at the 12th fret, it should be the exact same note and it should be right dead center. If it's sharp, and this one is a little sharp, I'll just tell you right up front, it is. If it's sharp, then that means you need to move this saddle back. And if you can't move it back, then you need to file the front edge off as much as you can to, to move the note further back. So in other words, this is all measured. It's a very calculated measurement from this nut to here. And the 12th fret is basically the halfway point from right here to here and from right here to there. It's the halfway point. So open, you've got an E. When you close it at the 12th fret, it's still an E. And you want that E to be perfectly dead center on your tuner in both places. And just the general rule of thumb, or the way I think of it, is if it's sharp, when you note it, if it's now sharp, then that means this distance is too short. Sharp is short. This distance is too short. You need to move it further back. If it's flat when you note it, that means the distance is too far back. That's the way I think of it. Now, I know other people have their own little way of thinking of it, and that's fine. It doesn't matter how you think of it. You just need to think of it. So for me, sharp is short. This distance is too short. And this one is too short. I'll just be honest and tell you, because it's not real. It's pretty good on most of the strings, but the bass E it's kind of got the Martin guitar problem. Martin guitars, a lot of them are sharp on the big E. But anyway, the point is that you want every string to be as perfect as possible. And sometimes it requires making special indentations in your saddle in certain places, to get it there. And, worst case scenario, and you've seen me do it, is you have to sometimes take the bridge off and move the bridge or make a new custom bridge with a new slot in a different place. That's why I float the strings, I float the bridge and the saddle and all that and move it around till I get that intonation just as perfect as you can get it. And some people will argue you can't get it perfect. And I guess I'd have to give them the argument and say, you're right, you can't. But on the other hand, you can get it so dang close that nobody cares. And that's the way I get it. I get it so darn close that it doesn't matter. It's so close that not anybody can really hear it. I mean, there's always those a few exceptional people that can hear it, but almost nobody else can. So that's my point, is you can really get it very close if you work at it right here. So that's words of wisdom number one, is intonation. Work on your intonation, get it as close as you can get it, and it will affect the overall sound of your guitar, not just that one string. It affects the overall sound because it puts it back in unison and it sends the chord out like in a choir, If one voice in that choir is way off and he's a loud voice, boy, it don't sound right, But if they're all in unison, perfect, perfect harmony, and it comes out almost like one voice. So, all right, so that's talking point number one. Talking point number two is what that email was about. He said, let me just surmise the email. The email said, we had a Martin guitar that used to really sound good. We had it worked on, And they put a shim under the saddle because it was buzzing a little bit. And, could that be the reason that it's not ringing out and real clear like it used to be? It just doesn't have the same kind of punch it used to have. All right, so let me back up and tell you a story related to this topic. And actually, this is kind of covers two talking points that I'm going to talk about today. I was at a festival up in Griggsville, Illinois, and a guy came up to me and had heard that I worked on instruments. And he said, I've got to have you take this instrument and work on it. He says, I understand you can make these things sound real good. He said, this guitar used to have the best sound in the world. He said, it was one of the best sounding Martin guitars ever. And he says, it just sounds dead as a doornail now. And so, I took it out, and it was during the day there, and I took it out and looked at it, and it was the filthiest instrument. Well, not the filthiest, but it was as filthy as just about any instrument I've ever seen. It was just filthy. I mean, filthy, nasty, dirty. Just looked horrible. I mean, that's like, God, you just can't take care of it a little bit? That's what I'm thinking. It looked horrible. I really can't stress it enough. So I took the instrument home, and it did. It sounded dead. It sounded like a Kmart cheap guitar. Is what it sounded like. It was just, it was a D35. It was a real nice D35, and it sounded worse than a cheap Kmart guitar. And I guess I should say Walmart guitar now, because Kmart's non-existent. But anyway, so I took it home, and I started my inspection. And this is the instrument, and some of you have heard this story before, and I am not exaggerating this story at all, I promise you. The small coffee can, I'm not talking about the big coffee can, but the small coffee can. I cleaned out a coffee can full of cat hair out of the inside of the instrument. And I'm not kidding, it was full. It was a full can of cat hair. How do you get that much cat hair in an instrument? I can't even imagine. I don't even know how that could happen. But I promise you, it was a full can full of cat hair. And and then I just cleaned the whole instrument really clean. And then I put on a new antler. I did a whole setup. I did fret leveling and recrowning and, a new antler saddle. And then I washed the whole instrument down, with a very damp, just a damp cloth and some dish soap type stuff, and cleaned it up really good. And then I gave it a real good waxing at that time I was using a furniture paste wax. Like, I think it was Minwax furniture paste wax. Now, that's good stuff, and I still stand by that. In fact, it's probably, really, I'm not just saying this, it probably is the very best that you can put on your instrument. It's really, really good. But the problem with it is it's really, really hard to get off. I mean, like, really hard to get off. So you don't want to do an area much bigger than about like this at a time. I mean, like, you want to do a small area if you want to use that stuff. But, just put it on and take it off immediately. Do not wait 5 minutes. Like maybe the can might say, wait a minute or something. Don't do that. Take it off immediately. So anyway, I waxed his whole instrument, and I promise you that went from sounding like a cheap Kmart guitar to one of the finest Martin guitars on the planet. I mean, that thing had the best ring and sound. It was just killer. It was killer. And I took it back to the guy. I think I saw him at another festival someplace, and I am not making this up. He actually started crying. Tears were just streaming down his cheeks. That was that dramatic of a difference. So that's talking point number, it was my last talking point, is about the cleanliness of your instrument. It makes a difference. Whether you think it does or it doesn't, it makes a big difference. That was the biggest difference in the sound, was the fact that this thing was so cluttered up inside, number one. It was just like if you put a blanket inside the thing. Or can you imagine if you stuffed your guitar full of cotton balls? I mean, stuffed it full. Can it ring? No, it can't ring. Well, that cat hair, it couldn't ring with all that cat hair in there either. And, and then the outside was just cruddy, filthy, dirty. Just the worst looking thing you ever saw in your life. It just looked like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was just horrible. Probably cat pee and whatever else. I have no idea what was on it, but it was nasty. So cleaning it up, giving it a good hard wax finish, crisps up the finish a lot and makes it ring. And honestly, I like this Renaissance wax a lot. It's great stuff. But honestly, the Minwax Pace Wax is probably even better, and especially in terms of sound. But man, you're going to work for it. You're going to work for it. I guarantee you. Do not underestimate how hard that is to get off. It's hard to get off, and you only want to do a small thing at a time, and you're going to feel it in your arms when you're done. Okay, so where I started with that was really talking about the saddle. And of course, on that guitar, I did put a new saddle on it. And of course, but what I wanted to talk about on the saddle is just like I said in his email. The description I gave him was you want to make it look like it was poured into the slot. You want to make sure that saddle fits as perfect as it can fit. Can you have a little bit of space in it? Yeah, you can get away with a little bit. But man, I would prefer if it was going to have space that it only be on the very ends, that there be no space front to back. On the thickness of the saddle, there should be zero space there. If you're going to have space, it should just be teeny amount on the ends. But I even really sneak up on that. And I mean, like, I sneak up on it. And I'll fit it sometimes 5, 6 times, if not more, to make sure I get it the right length. And the fit, then in terms of, I think the fact that when I say it looks like it was poured in there is description enough on that part of the fitment. But the other part of the fitment is that you want it to, you want to have a little bit of force to push it in, but not enough force that you're going to bust something. Like you want to make sure that it doesn't fall in. You want to have to kind of wiggle it and force it down in there, but it shouldn't be like you're having to push and push to get it in there. You want it perfectly tight, but not force it so much to get it in there. So I'm just trying to be clear about that. All of those things make a difference on your sound. The reason you don't want to force it is because you'll break your bridge. I mean, because, any kind of a wedge will crack wood. So you don't want to force it so hard that you're cracking your wood. But you do want as tight a fit as you can get. I mean, just as tight as you can get without ridiculous force. So that's the saddle part there. And then I guess if I was going a little deeper on the saddle itself, this is me. I prefer not to have the arch in the top of the saddle. A lot of, like most of them coming from the factory, just are a rounded top saddle. I don't want that. I want the saddle that has the angle on it, and the front leading edge is the last place that touches the string before it goes down the fretboard. You want the saddle, you want the saddle to make contact with the string. So if that's the saddle, you want it to, you want to make full contact with the string, but the last place you want it to touch is right there where it leaves the saddle. If it's touching in the middle, it's a chance it'll buzz on the front of the saddle. If the high point is in the middle or the high point's at the back, then especially if it's high points at the back, it'll definitely buzz across the top of your saddle. I say definitely. It depends how. Everything depends on angles and stuff. But, my point is if it's just slightly high in the back, it's going to buzz across there. And that's a hard buzz to figure out. And it's not so much a buzz as it's a deadening. It's like, instead of that real crisp, clear tong, you'll hear a you kind of hear a, you don't really hear a buzz, but you hear the same note, but it's just like, muted like almost. It's just dull. It doesn't have that. So like if you've got 6 strings and you hear 5 of them are ringing out real clear, and you hear one of them that's not ringing out, and you're going, why is that one not ringing out? More than likely, it's your saddle or it's your nut. One of the two. You're talking about just open strings. And they're ringing out real good, except maybe 1 string or maybe 2 strings. If they're not ringing out, then it's almost always your saddle or your nut. Almost always. The only other exception I can think to that would be the string itself. And there have been strings that I've seen more than one time, I'd say a half dozen times at least, if not more, where the serving on the string, the wrapping, whatever you want to call it, I call it serving because a bowstring has serving, and I've always called it that. But anyway, that serving that's on your string, that can be loose, and that can cause the string to deaden too. But that's pretty rare, but it can happen. So that's something to check. If you can't figure it out anywhere else, then check your serving. What I do to check the serving is I'll kind of slide my fingers one way on the serving, hit the note. If that didn't fix it, I'd try sliding it the other way and see if it changed the sound. And if it does change the sound, then that's your problem. Okay, saddle-wise, I think that's pretty much everything I was going to cover. And of course your saddle is tied to your intonation. So, if you go back to that intonation example I gave you earlier. If it's sharp, then the distance is too short, and you want to move it back, maybe file the front of the saddle off some. Again, though, no matter if you file it off all the way toward the back, the last place you want that string touching is at the front edge of that part of the saddle. Even if it's filed back, it still should touch on that front place that it's leaving the saddle, if that makes sense. So we've talked about intonation, the saddle, and the cleanliness. Well, then the last, elephant in the room is your action. And action has an effect on your overall sound too, but of course it's got much more effect on your overall playability. But it can have an effect on your sound too. And if your action's really high, like, the general rule of thumb. So just hear general when I say this. The general rule of thumb is that the higher the action, the more pressure you're putting on your saddle, the more it's going to vibrate your top, the better your sound's going to be. But that's a general rule of thumb. There's always a point of diminishing return. So, at some point, you're going to get a diminishing return when you get it too high. It's going to start to sound like you're playing inside of a box. You're going to get a hollower sound. It's especially noticeable on mandolins. You want to play it as... So here's my rule of thumb instead of a general rule of thumb. This is more of a specific rule of thumb. You want to play your saddle as high as you can play it comfortably. In other words, you don't want it right down on the strings, on the frets. If you can play it a little higher than that and play it clearly and play it comfortably, then you're better off with a little bit higher saddle then. As long as you can still play it comfortably and all of that, then that's the better rule of thumb to follow. Play it as high as you can stand to play it, and play it comfortably and play it well. Let's see. Action-wise, too, a lot of guys, as soon as they hear a buzz or something, they instantly go to the saddle. In fact, I can think of one right now I could name, but I won't. They instantly go to the saddle. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the saddle. Maybe 8 times out of 10. It's not the saddle. It's probably your frets. Your frets have to be level, perfectly level. If you just take a second and do this one little test, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's obvious as heck. They got to be perfectly level. So, just pick a fret and note it. Okay, now look at the next fret. You can't even see between there. If that fret's just the least little bit high, it's going to buzz. So it's generally your frets aren't perfectly level when you have a buzzing problem. So, I mean, that's the first place to look. Don't go here first. Go here first, and look at that. And if you're really obviously buzzing on lots of frets and stuff, then more than likely your saddle is too low. But if it's just a single buzz, then most likely it's just a high fret. And it's an unlevel fret, and it can be out by just a couple thousandths and it's going to buzz. I mean, it don't take much at all. Much at all. I think I beat that to death. Let's look at the comments. Let's see. Bob L., good morning from the UK. Hi, Bob. Clyde Lewis, good morning from Oklahoma. And then Clyde has a follow-up question. Jerry, one of these days, could you do a deep dive into the way you grounded your dust collection system in your shop? Yeah, I can do that. I don't think it's going to take much of a deep dive. I'm trying to decide if I should do it just right now, but maybe I'll actually take some video and show it. It might be better. So I'll try to remember to do that. In fact, I'll make a note. I'm just going to write it here. Dust collection ground. That way I'll remember, and I'll include it in the next vlog, which will probably be next. Well, we won't have a vlog on Monday either because we'll be driving back on Monday. So it'll probably be Tuesday or sometime at that point. Okay, well, anyway, I will get to that. It's a good point. Brian Byler was there from Ohio, and Brian, will be neighbors tomorrow then because I'll be up in Ohio. But you're in northeast Ohio. We'll be in more central Ohio. Still can't think of this darn name of the town. I know it as good as I know my own name. I can't think of it. Lee Duffield, good morning from Toronto. Ken Solo is good morning from California. And Dogfather61 from the UK. Yeah, good. Well, then after we went live, Papa, greetings from California. Doug Santaniello says, good morning, Jerry. Good morning, Doug. Chip Wood, good morning. And Dogfather61 says, it's for hooking up a sink plug. Ding, 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 ding. That's what it is, I'm sure. This used to have a rubber stopper on it, and then you would hook this up here like that to get it out of the way. And you would either use it on a sink or a bathtub even, I think. It's probably more likely a sink, as you say, but I could see it possibly being on some bathtubs also. But more likely this specific one was for a sink. So, yep, you won. You were the first one. Kathy Voltes, good morning from Southeast Florida. Well, good morning. There's a lot of people on here. Kurt Childress from Dallas. Let's see, Wolf's Spirit. And I don't know, that's a symbol. I know that name of that symbol, and I can't think of it now. Whatever that symbol is. I forgot. I used to know. Paul Knowles from St. Charles. Well, that's not too far. Christia Thomason from North Carolina. And she has a question. Subscriber count is 97.4 thousand. Yeah, well, we're still growing then. I wish we could grow faster, but I'm afraid JR's going to pass me up. And you really, truly don't understand JR. Man, you can't live nothing down with that boy. He's something else. He may come across one way on the video, but I can tell you for sure he's relentless. Kurt Childress, what do you recommend for guitar practice? Well, I recommend perfect practice. I've said that to poor Cash a million times. You can practice all day long, but if you're not practicing perfectly, if you will, then your practice is doing you no good. And his was specifically directed at his habits. He forms habits really quick. I mean, like almost instantaneously. And so it's real important that I show him how to do it the right way and make sure that he's doing it the right way, because if he does it slightly wrong, he'll do it slightly wrong every single time. And so, what do I recommend for guitar practice? It's such a wide open thing. It's really hard to say. But recognizing where you're strong, recognizing where you're not so strong, and being able to recognize it is probably the best part of your practice. And overcoming those weaknesses, however you have to do it. Like if you were expecting me to say something like, scales and these sort of things. No, I don't think of it like that. Everybody has their own way of learning whatever it is they're learning. But I guess my suggestion is to watch the habits. Because once you get a habit, man, it's hard to break. I taught archery, and that's where I first learned about habits. If I could find somebody that never knew anything about a bow, ever, never touched one in their life, I could almost guarantee I could have them hitting a paper plate at 20 yards, that's 60 feet away, and keeping every arrow on that paper plate in under an hour. I could have them doing that. If by chance they had already learned how to shoot on their own, you could triple that time frame, because their habits is what caused the problem. And it's the same way with playing music. It really is. And I especially see it with Cash. Wow, do I see it with Cash. Okay, so that's the best I got. I'm sorry if that sounds like a lame answer. This scrolled up and let's see. Okay, let me make sure I know where I'm at here. I don't want to skip anybody. Mark and company. Hi, Jerry. Mark here. I am longtime viewer. I was wondering if your vertigo still bothers you. Well, Mark, I would say you are psychic, because it doesn't bother me very often. But this morning in there, when I was making those little short clips, the one on the Buckeye and the one on the shop itself, I had to reach up and get something off of a high shelf, and I had my head cocked back like that, and when I came back down, I was really dizzy. I mean, really dizzy. And like I said, it doesn't happen every time, but this morning I was really dizzy. Yeah, my vertigo, I don't think it's ever going to go away completely. And anytime I get down and under something and have to, twist my head, oh, it's terrible. It's really bad. So, yeah, I think I've got it for life. And I never, ever had it even one single time until I got the Meniere's disease. And when I got that Meniere's disease, man, it changed everything. That was in my left ear. And yeah, that was a crazy, crazy time. If you don't know what Meniere's disease is, the way it was explained to me by the doctors is that you have 3 kinds of fluid, or 3 separate chambers of fluid in your ear, and when the fluids get mixed up somehow, like something, the membrane whatever breaks or whatever, and the fluids go together. That's called Meniere's disease, and it can make you deaf. I mean, it can do all kinds of problems. The way I discovered I had it was I was sleeping on the couch one night. I tell you, I can't. This was before I finally made myself sleep in a recliner, because until I got to the recliner, I couldn't sleep very good at all. I was up and down and all because of my arthritis in the hips and back and ribs. Well, anyway, so I was sleeping on the couch trying to find a comfortable position, and I had my head down and didn't hear anything at all. I was just sleeping or trying to sleep and couldn't hear nothing at all. I turned my head the other way, and it was pouring down rain outside. Put my head back down the other way, and I'm going, I don't hear nothing. Like nothing. Put my head the other way, it was clearly raining outside. So the one ear had just gone deaf in the night. I mean, completely deaf. And it was really bad. And that's what screwed up my balance. And that's what screwed up and gave me the vertigo. And I am not kidding you. While I was being treated for that and the medicines and things, the vertigo was so cotton picking severe that I can't even begin to over exaggerate how bad it was. You can't I can't relate to how bad it was even now. I mean, it's like you say this and you go, it couldn't have been that bad. It was that bad. I mean, it was like it would hit you. You'd be sitting down just like this, and it would hit you, and you'd grab your chair like this because the room started spinning at about 300, like 100 miles an hour. I mean, it was spinning so fast that it was a blur. God, it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. If that would happen when you were driving, good luck with that one. So I wasn't doing a lot of driving during that time when I was having those bad attacks. Man, it was super, super severe. And it's gone way down from that. It's nothing like that anymore. But gee whiz, it's still really annoying when you get really dizzy, you know. And there's been a few spells where it was really bad. And not too long ago, I guess that's what you're referring to, it was pretty bad. But I haven't had any real bad episodes since that one. But man, I'm telling you, you can't imagine how fast a room can spin while you're standing perfectly still. It's just nuts, absolutely nuts. Okay, moving down here, and it just scrolled on me again. Doggone it. Every time it does that, I have to find my place. Steve Olson says, I was playing some Cash yesterday on the baritone uke. Well, cool. Lester Cunningham, Jerry, be safe on your trip. Thank you. Ohio needs some rocks. Yeah, it's funny. We're hauling probably at least a ton of rocks out there, if not more. Ken Sola says, hi, Jerry. I used to get frustrated with scratched safety glasses until someone told me that better the safety glasses get scratched than my eyes. Yeah, that's true, too. I agree with that. I'm going to skip down. Sorry if I'm passing you up here, but I'm looking for the question marks. Blackjack Guitar, 114 watching and only 38 likes. Show Jerry some love. Hey, thank you. Yeah, do that. 141 or 151 right now, it says. Lon, have you ever thought of buying a mini lathe for some of the very small parts? Well, my lathe is kind of a hybrid like that. It's kind of a mini lathe. It's a pretty small lathe, really, but it's also has a very large swing capacity for a small lathe. But yeah, my lathe kind of really does it all. I really do like it. But no, I probably would never get one of those mini lathes because I don't feel like I can't do really tiny parts on my lathe. It does really tiny parts. But having this even helps you more with that, having that little tiny point. So anyway, let's see, moving down to the next one. Next question mark that I see is DE. It says, Jerry, I am wondering if you will taking a trip to your back pond soon. Oh, yeah, I should. The fish back there, I wished I would have had a camera with me. I don't think I even had my phone with me. I was back there and I was feeding them. It was just a couple days ago. It was in an afternoon, and I threw out some feed. And I'm telling you, those fish have gotten big. Some of them, it's amazing. Leon said, Leon's a real fisherman. He says, yeah, when you feed them, they get big really fast. They get big a lot quicker, because they don't get that much food in the wild, And I'm telling you, I didn't see the fish, but this, how a big fish can make that, whoa, whoa, that water, it did that. And I went, wow, what was that? Because I didn't think there was any fish in there that big, A little fish doesn't make that sound. It never does. So it was a big fish. I don't know which one it was. It was probably one of the grass carp, but anyway, it was a big sound. So it had to be at least, I would say at least 1.5 pound, 2 pound fish to make a sound that big, if not bigger. So maybe I'll get a picture of that here before too long and show you some more of that. I'm trying to find my place again, sorry. Okay. Dogfather61 says, Jerry Cash rocks. I don't know if that's a play on words here. Hurt myself again. Oh yeah, that song he came out with at the end. Yeah, Johnny Cash. He's hard to beat. He you know, I say that, and he was never really one of my strong favorites. I mean, he was always good. I mean, I never disliked him or anything, but he wasn't one of the guys that I really sought out their music. You know what I mean? Merle Haggard, for sure. I sought out Merle's stuff. I really, really was a huge fan of Merle. Marty Robbins, the Statler Brothers, you know, Oak Ridge Boys, things like that. I really like those guys. I just never did do a lot of Johnny Cash songs or anything. Marigold Time, greetings from Sweden. She subscribes to both me and JR. Hope neither of you mind. So I saw Oliver first though. So she came over here from Oliver. I'll be darned. I sent a lot of folks over to Oliver's channel. So you know, if you don't know who Oliver is, that's a draft horse that was almost dead when my son found him at an auction. Well, he couldn't afford him at that auction. He went more money, or they no-sailed him for more money than my son was willing to even pay. And then the viewers got behind it and helped support it. And then JR drove all the way to Texas and bought the horse and saved its life. The horse, Oliver, I know a lot about horses. I grew up on a horse ranch, and I thought JR was hyping it at the beginning, and I'm telling you for sure, the horse wouldn't have lasted another 2 weeks at the tops. He had a week left, is the way I'm thinking of it, when JR got him back here, and had he not got the care he needed, he would have been dead. There is no doubt about it in my mind at all. It showed up way worse in person than it did on video, trust me. Paul Akers, can you add a washer to a truss rod to get more adjusting if the bottom out on the threads? Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Paul. Yeah. You know, another talking point on this setup stuff is I've often said, and I kind of mean it, and I kind of don't. I mean, I understand why we have truss rods. I get it. I know we need them. But in so many ways, I wish instruments did not have truss rods at all. Because of any one single thing that people screw up, it's the truss rod. It's the truss rod. I mean, you know, I would say, I don't know, I hate to say as bad as it sounds, but I really do think that about 8 out of 10 of them are screwed up when they come in here. And if they have the two-way truss rod, I guarantee you 8 out of 10 of those are screwed up. At least they've always been when they come in this shop. You know, they turn them the wrong way. So just let me give you a little bit of words of wisdom on your truss rod. To adjust the truss rod properly, you really shouldn't have any string pressure on there. If you've got a lot of string pressure on there and you're trying to tighten your truss rod, the two are opposing forces and they're fighting one another. That's not a good thing. So you need to determine if you need to adjust your truss rod under full string pressure. You make the determination while it's strung up, you know, everything's as good as it can be. You determine, do I need to tighten my truss rod? And the way you determine that is you look at it, and quite honestly, I don't have a better way. I mean, I know people like to use these dang rulers and all kinds of things, and that's fine if you need to do that. But for me, I just take and I look right down this sucker, and I look right down the fretboard. I'm looking right down this. And I look down on both sides, and if I can see a clear underbow, for sure your truss rod's too loose. Well, let me back that up too, but let's just say that you would think you need to tighten your truss rod. If you can see a clear underbow, then most likely you need to tighten your truss rod. You should only be able to, it takes a really good eye to see, like when it's flat, it'll look almost perfectly flat to most people, but yet there'll be just a hint of an underbow, and that's what you want. 12 thousandths is a hint. It's not a lot. 12 thousandths is thinner than a thin guitar pick over the length of your fretboard. Thinner. It's about, I'd almost say, half the thickness of your thin guitar pick. It's 2/3 the thickness of your thin guitar pick over the length of your fretboard. So it's not much at all. If you can see a clear underbow, then odds are you need to tighten your truss rod. If you can see an overbow, then you've either tightened a two-way truss rod too much, or the wrong way, I mean. Because if you turn a two-way truss rod the wrong way, it will force an overbow in your neck. And that's what I see often, and I mean like a lot, when people bring them in with two-way truss rods. They've turned it the wrong way. And so it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. But the thing is that once you go lefty far enough with a two-way truss rod, it starts to get tight again, and people get fooled by that, and they think that's the way they need to turn it. And that forces an overbow in your fretboard. So why do people why do I say that I wish they didn't have a truss rod at all? Because people are always thinking that they can tighten that truss rod and fix their action. And the way I like to say it is it affects your action, but it does not fix your action problem. If you have an action problem, you fix that at your nut and your saddle. The only thing you want for your truss rod is to let it have a slight, very, very slight underbow. If you've got that and you still have an action problem, then you don't mess with your truss rod. You just want to see that you have the slightest amount of underbow. In fact, I would say for most of you, if you look down it and you see that it's perfectly flat, you're good to go. Because more than likely you have a slight underbow and you just don't realize it. If it's perfectly flat or the very slightest hint of an underbow, you're good to go. Do not try to adjust it, do not try to adjust your truss rod for your action. That's what everybody does. Your action is adjusted really with three things. It's your neck angle, which is the big hard one to fix. It's your saddle height, and it's your nut. Those are the three things. That's the only three things that change your action. Anybody that tells you that your action can be fixed with your truss rod is black and white, 100% wrong. Period. I don't care who they are, what they think they know, they're wrong. Period. Zero is wrong. Will it affect your action? A little bit. Because it will, a little bit. If you have a real big underbow and you pull that back out, it's going to affect your action a little bit. But it doesn't change your neck angle. It doesn't change the height at these ends, and that's where you affect your action. I'm telling you, that you can take to the bank. It's black and white. It's not gray. But so many people have that misunderstanding, and that's why I wish there was no truss rods at all, really. I mean, I know you got to have them, but you understand my point. You would not believe how often the truss rod gets screwed up. And I can just name names all day long about people that just have a misconception about what the truss rod's for. The truss rod is there to just have the slightest amount of relief. That's all that's for. It's nothing else. Just get it perfectly flat or the slightest amount of relief, and then leave your truss rod alone. Don't mess with it ever again. unless it somehow pulls a bigger underbow into it, of course. Okay, that's a rant, but man, I'm seriously telling you, that one there is serious. Michael 2X says, do you ever play Jerusalem Ridge? Yeah, sort of. The only problem with Jerusalem Ridge is just about everybody that plays it or backs it up has a slightly different version of it, and I've really never just taken time to really study it and get it down, so, but it's a good tune, and I can play it, but I typically only play it when I hear other people playing it. Okay, let's see, moving on. It's a cool tune. I'm definitely like the tune. It's a great tune. Bill Monroe, people love him or hate him, but I'm telling you what, when it comes to songwriting and stuff like that, he was pretty much a musical genius. He really was. Not so much. I wasn't the biggest fan of his singing, though the purest bluegrassers, you'll start a fight when you say that with the purest bluegrassers. But I wasn't the biggest fan of his voice, but his mandolin playing and his songwriting, man, hard to beat. Hard to beat. Gary Smythe from the UK, I had that vertigo where the room spun and I had no coordination. I found to concentrate on my finger, slowly bring it to my nose. Man, I'm telling you, yeah, you truly don't get the vertigo thing until you have that room spinning on you. Then you'll get it. Trust me, you'll understand it. I probably had no empathy for anybody that said they had vertigo because I had never experienced it up to the time I had the Meniere's disease. Never had it even slightly. But boy, after the Meniere's disease, everything changed. I'm telling you. I got all kinds of empathy for people who say they've got vertigo now. Matt Tommen, Mr. Rosa, have fun in Ohio. Thank you. Let's see, moving down here. James Kopp doesn't have any question marks, but it's a long one, so I'll just read through it. Working on the Irish tin whistle, hope to find guitar or mandolin player to work with. I have found bluegrass folks that do this. Yeah, James, I think a friend of mine who recently passed, he played fiddle on my It's in the Wind album. And you know me in names. I know his name perfectly, just can't. George Ports is his name. His wife played tin whistle, and they did a lot of the Irish stuff every once in a while. But he was a really good fiddle player. In fact, I think he won a national fiddle competition one time. Rooster Run Workshop says, have you ever listened to the Johnson Mountain Boys? Yeah, I love the Johnson Mountain Boys. They were cool. I really liked them. And, Eddie Stubbs was the mandolin player, and Eddie Stubbs is the voice for the Grand Ole Opry, on at least it was at one time, and he's also the announcer on the Marty Stewart show. So Eddie Stubbs, if you see him, he was the mandolin player for the Johnson Mountain Boys at one time. I don't think the Johnson Mountain Boys exist anymore. I don't think. I mean, that was a long time ago, I think, unless they've revived it or something. But as far as I know, they don't exist. They were good. I really liked them. In fact, the guitar player for the Johnson Mountain Boys, I probably can't pull his name up, but he is now like guitar player and stuff for the newer Seldom scene that's out there. God, I can't think of his name, but anyway, he was part of the Johnson Mountain Boys too at one time. He had a real unique voice, and he sings in the Seldom scene now, kind of sometimes a little bit like John Duffy. Lon, question marks, Jerry, I am now 69. I will be soon. And do remember the old hay mowers and hauling hay. We were poor people who lived close to the dollar, but my grandparents who raised me thought that education was the future. Yeah, Lon, that was the way in my family. My dad wanted me to get a good education. In fact, he would not let me take off school to go down to Ava, which was the world champion. I'm not choked up. I just something. I get dry throat type. Can't talk. Anyway, he would not let me take off school to go down to Ava, Missouri, which is the World Championships for the Foxtrotting Horse Breed Association. And I never, ever once went down there. And he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's won World Championships, and, you know, he taught a blind boy how to ride, and the blind boy won the World Youth Championship. And, you know, and the boy was blind. I mean, like totally, completely, 100% blind. And yet won the World Youth Championship, and nobody knew he was blind until after he won. And then the crowd went nuts. So I never got to go down there, and, you know, because of education. My dad wanted me to go to school, you know. And then, of course, with my next brother in line, Steve, who's 4 years younger, and then Scott, you've seen on the channel, he's another 4 years younger, so he's 8 years younger than me, and then Angie. So Steve, a little bit got to go. Scott went a lot and won world championships himself, and Angie, she won the ladies' world championships also. And so the whole family got to go, and I never actually went there one single time in my life until after my father passed away. And then, ironically, we were booked to play bluegrass there a couple of different times after he passed away. It's just nuts to believe that actually happened, and it did, you know. Crazy. Let's see, Lon has one more. It says, I used to play guitar, but I have had a stroke in 99 and can't make my fingers work right. Can you suggest anything to help? Yeah, Lon, I don't know for sure on that. You know, I had a friend, Dick Hatfield. You've heard him on the channel too, playing banjo, but on the Pickin' Friends CDs, the songs that are on Pickin' Friends album, which I think some of those are sold on my website. Dick is playing banjo on those, and he had a stroke. And all of those were made after he had his stroke. He quite honestly, he didn't play as well afterwards, but it's still pretty good, you know. But I can tell the difference in his playing after his stroke and before his stroke. Playing before his stroke was pretty darn fine. And after his stroke, it was good. You know, I'm still good. And he got better with time. Unfortunately, he had more strokes later, and he is now in the veterans home. So I think fondly of Dick Hatfield. So anyway, Lon, I don't know what to tell you on that other than just don't let it beat you, man. Just get after it. Just hang in there and try and try and try. That's the only thing that I know that you can do. And you just never give up, you know. That's the way I am, boy. I mean, I don't ever give up. I just don't, you know. Like if something's beating me, I might set it down for a day, but I'll go back to it, and I won't give up, you know. I just keep trying, and usually you'll find a way. And I would imagine that, Lon, if you keep trying, maybe you'll find something that you can do with that. I don't know. Just I pray for you, man. I hope you work it out. Dick Lennon says, Jerry, did you ever see the Dillards back in the day? No, I never saw them in real life. I met one of the Dillards, and I met the mandolin player too, who is not a Dillard. Dean Webb was the mandolin player. I met him once or twice, and I met some of the other Dillards, like backstage type thing, just briefly. They wouldn't remember me. I don't even think they're living now. I think they've passed. I'm not really sure, but I didn't really know too much about them. I just thought that it was pretty cool how they made their splash in bluegrass and got on the Andy Griffith show and all that good stuff. That was pretty cool. Rooster Run Workshop. Wasn't Eddie the fiddle player? Yes, Eddie Stubbs was the fiddle player for the Johnson Mountain Boys. I probably said mandolin player, maybe. Yeah, he was the fiddle player. I don't know what I said, but he definitely was the fiddle player. And the other guy, still trying to think of his name, who's with Seldom Seen now, real good singer. I mean, he's got kind of a unique sounding voice. It's, you know, it's one of those kind of, it has to kind of grow on you type thing. When you first hear him, you might not think it was that great, but he's a real good singer. Can't think of his name, but anyway, he was with the Johnson Mountain Boys too, and he's now with Seldom Seen. Guys, that's going to be it. I've probably gone way past time. Yeah, we've been an hour and 15 minutes. I hope you got something out of the Luthier words of wisdom there. I guarantee you, every single thing I told you there, you can take to the bank, especially the simple things like keep it clean, keep the inside clean, keep the dust out of there. I mean, all of that matters. And just keeping a good paste wax on your instrument, believe it or not, it has an effect on the sound. It really does. It doesn't, sometimes it's really noticeable, and sometimes it's just barely any noticeable at all, but it's still worth doing. Keep it clean and keep it waxed up, and you'll be in good shape. That's going to be it. We will probably see you next on Tuesday. I will try to get some kind of video out this weekend. Well, I don't know if that'll happen. I'll try. I'll see what I can do. We'll see you then.